This is probably the most tragic and preventable airplane accident you'll ever hear about. The facts of this story are so shocking that when the audio of what led to the disaster was discovered, investigators and airline officials couldn't believe their ears. The audio of this disaster is so unsettling, but I will include it at the end of this story. On March 23, 1994, Aeroflight 593 was on its way from Russia to Hong Kong. On this flight, there were 63 passengers and 12 crew members, 9 of which were flight attendants. Then there were 3 pilots responsible for flying the plane. 2 of the passengers on board were 16-year-old Eldar Kudrinsky and 12-year-old Yana Kudrinsky, and they were the son and daughter of Yaroslav Kudrinsky, who was one of the pilots on this plane. Yaroslav was taking his kids on their first international flight, and he was a proud pilot and wanted to show his kids his workplace, but he may have went a little too far. As they were nearing Hong Kong, Yaroslav invited his kids into the cockpit, which is the front of the plane where all of the controls are. This wasn't a problem until Yaroslav encouraged his kids to get into the captain's seat and take turns flying the plane. He would soon regret this decision. Part 2 of what happened to Aeroflight 593. So pilot Yaroslav Kudrinsky asked his 12-year-old daughter Yana if she would like to get into the pilot's seat and fly the plane. Yana was a bit scared, but her father encouraged her that it would be fine. Now, Yaroslav wasn't actually going to let her fly the plane. He would only make it seem like she was. Once she got into the pilot's seat, autopilot would be turned on. He would press some controls that would turn the plane slightly to the left, and it would feel like she was actually the one turning the plane to the left. She kind of felt the control handle turning itself, so she knew it wasn't actually her taking control. Once she was done, it was now his 16-year-old son Eldar's turn. Now, when Eldar got into the pilot's seat, his dad messed with the controls to make it seem like Eldar was flying the plane just like he did for Yana. Then he put the controls back to normal, which leveled the plane out. Then he left Eldar in the pilot's seat and got distracted and started talking to his daughter Yana. While Yaroslav wasn't paying attention, Eldar was in the pilot's seat, forcing the control handle to go into the direction that he wanted, which was fighting the autopilot, so the autopilot disconnected. Now 16-year-old Eldar is actually in control and is flying the plane. Part 3 of what happened to Aeroflight 593. 16-year-old Eldar is in the pilot's seat of Aeroflight 593 while it's in the air after being given permission from his father Yaroslav, who was a pilot on the plane. Eldar accidentally disconnects the autopilot and is now actually in control of flying the plane, which has 75 occupants in total. Yaroslav was completely distracted, so he didn't notice anything was wrong until Eldar asked, "Why is the plane turning?" In which Yaroslav responds, "Is it turning itself?" Eldar responds, "Yes." The plane is now at a sharp 90-degree angle and it keeps turning every second. At this point, Yaroslav should have immediately removed his son from the pilot's seat and took control of the aircraft, but he didn't. He just stood over Eldar in the pilot's seat, looking at the controls, trying to figure out what's wrong. Before they know it, the plane is going down at about 40,000 feet per minute. But the plane is going down at an angle. They're almost upside down. It's like going down the hill of a roller coaster, so they're being pinned back to their seats. Because of the amount of pressure from the plane going down and pinning everyone back to their seats, Eldar...
Am I wrong for leaving my husband after I found out that he had cancer? So my husband and I had been married for about 10 years before we started becoming distant. A little while after, he actually cheated on me with one of my close friends. After that, nothing was ever the same between me and him. Now, don't get me wrong, I still loved him, but things could never go back to the way they used to be. Eventually, he fell sick, started losing a lot of weight, having trouble breathing, getting random rashes on his skin. So we both agreed that he should go to the hospital to get checked. So he went to the hospital and had to wait a few days to get the results. A few days had passed, so he went back to the hospital to get his results. When he came back home, I asked him what his results were. He said everything was fine, there was nothing to worry about. Then he put his keys on the counter and hopped into the shower. A couple days before, I had lost my credit card. I looked everywhere for it, couldn't find it, but the only place I didn't look was my husband's car. So I grabbed his keys while he was in the shower and I went to his car to look for my credit card. I was thinking maybe it fell out of my wallet while I was sitting in one of the seats. While I was looking for the credit card, I found a folder from the hospital he just went to. When I looked inside the folder, there was his test result. It was a biopsy test that confirmed he had cancer. So I went back inside to confront him for lying to me. This is part 2 of the story of me leaving my husband after I found out that he had cancer. So after I found the positive test results in his car that confirmed he had cancer, I went back inside to confront him for lying to me. I was sitting down waiting for him to get out of the shower. But then I kind of decided that I didn't want to confront him. Our marriage was already going downhill and I was already having thoughts about leaving him anyway. I mean, he did cheat on me with my close friend. I know this might make me sound like a terrible person, but I didn't want to be there for him. I didn't want to be his main support system mentally or physically. And cancer is a lot to deal with. I didn't want to be in and out of the hospital, spending multiple days there, sleeping there, paying all of the bills myself. It would be too much for me. So I decided I was going to pack my things and leave without telling him when or why. And I mean, he didn't know that I knew he had cancer, so he wouldn't think that I was leaving him because of that. So I knew I needed to leave before he decided to tell me he had cancer, so it didn't look like I left him because of that. So the next day, he went to work, and then I went to work. As in packing all my stuff, and then I left. Afterwards, he kept begging me to come back, so I blocked him, and I haven't talked to him since. Am I wrong for bullying my little sister into losing weight? Growing up, I had always been relatively skinny, so was everyone in my family, my mom, my dad, my 2 older brothers, and even my little sister. As we grew up, my little sister started to gain weight, and she was the only person in my family who was gaining a lot of weight. At first, it wasn't that much, but it got to a point where people started making comments about it. Don't get me wrong, my little sister has always been drop dead gorgeous, but she found it hard to make friends, and as she got older, she started growing more interest in boys, but they didn't like her because of her weight. She was about to enter high school, and I know that high school can be brutal, and I didn't want her to get bullied, and I also didn't want her to have a bad high school experience. I didn't didn't want her to not have any friends or to not get invited to parties all because of the way that she looks. So I slowly started making comments about how much she eats and how certain clothes didn't look good on her just to give her a hint. I love my sister to death, so I had to show her tough love. I know that it hurt her feelings and we got into arguments about it a few times, but eventually she started eating healthier and she would start going to the gym with me. And once she lost the weight, she became a lot more confident and started to fit in.